Hi, how are you? It's a Dr. Muso. Today we want to talk about China. We want to talk about what took place in China. So here is our question. List any six economical challenges faced by Mao's government before 1976. What were the economical challenges that were faced by Mao Zedong, in China before 1976? So we want to look on these economical challenges. Number one, we see that there was a problem of unemployment. So many people in China, they were not employed. That problem of unemployment affected several citizens, several people in China. It became a problem to Mao Zedong's government. Number two, the poor relations with the Soviet Union. China was not in good relations with the Soviet Union. Soviet Union, you are talking about Russia. So this led Russia to withdraw technical and financial support. Russia no longer supported China. Why? Because of the bad relations. That on its own led Russia to withdraw technical and also financial support. That on its own it had a bearing on China. It affected China. So that became an economical problem in China. We also talk about a poor iron and steel produced in the communes. The communes were producing poor iron. The communes were producing poor steel. That on its own led to an economical challenge. Why? It was because of the poor quality of iron and steel that were produced by the communes. We also talk about the issue of low wages, the salaries that were given to the workers. The what salaries that were given to the workers, they were not adequate. That on its own, it was a challenge in the sense that so many workers were given salaries which were below a poverty at that line. You also talk about outdated machineries. The machineries that were used in China, they were outdated. Using outdated machineries, it led to low production, productivity remained low, and it became an economical challenge. You also talk about the sharp decline in agricultural production. There was a decline in agricultural productivity, agricultural production. That on its own, it was a problem in the sense that agricultural productivity remained low in China. Then you talk about the peasants. They remained poor. The peasants remained facing severe challenges, severe problems. Why? It is because they were very poor. That again, it was a challenge to the economy of China. Let's move on and talk about number B, which says describe any six agrarian reforms. What were the agrarian reforms in China which benefited the peasants between 1949 and 1976. So we want to talk about the reforms that were introduced in China, which benefited the peasants in the period 1949 and 1976. Number one, the issue of the land distribution. The peasants, they benefited, they were given land. Land now led them to practice agriculture. So by so doing now, it limited the problems of food inadequacy, the problems of food shortages. So the distribution, the giving of land somehow benefited the people in China. So this was an agrarian reform which benefited so many peasants in the period 1949 and 1976. You also talk about the agrarian reform, the agrarian law of 1950. In 1950, an agrarian law was introduced and it allowed the government to take land from the landowners. So those people, the land barons, the landowners who were owning land, they lost their lands through the land agrarian reform of 1950. That land, it was given to the peasants. So this benefited the peasants to a greater extent. Then we also see that by 1952, 30 million peasants had been given land. So many people by 1952 now, 30 million of them now, they were now in possession of land. So that on its own, it was a benefit to the peasants. Then also talk about collective farms which were formed by the peasants. It led the peasants now to work together. They were now producing and marketing their goods, coming together of peasants, working together by the peasants now. That on its own, it improved the productivity. It also improved food availability in the country. So the problems of food somehow they were kept because of the coming together of peasants, collectivization, working together, making sure that food was going to be adequate to so many people in the country. You also talk about the government also aiding, assisting the new peasants in the collective farms. So the peasants were now assisted. They were helped by the government chipping in, assisting these peasants so that they were going to have adequacy in terms of food production, in terms of food availability. You also see that there was also increased productivity by the workers working together, coming together, collaborating, making sure that something was supposed to be done to improve the economy or to improve the agrarian production in the country. So these were some of the reforms, the agrarian reforms, the agricultural reforms that were introduced that benefited the peasants in the period 1949 and 1976. Thank you so much. It's Dr. Moso.